Hey everybody, I'm here, a little bit late, got distracted by a really clever catfish who had an almost really convincing account for someone whose work I definitely pay attention to, who's quite well known, who had set up a fake profile that looked really fucking convincing. But then there was a few things that gave it away. She said, moving some pens and shit. I'm upstairs in our bedroom. I don't know how good an idea this is being up here, but basically we have, if you hear banging noises, it's because we have construction workers next door doing a loft conversion. Who's that? Speak to me. I wanted to, obviously, called to come on here and do this today, basically, because obviously we look outside into the world and it's a bit of a fucking mess right now, isn't it? And I've been doing work around this for myself, and then I was being kicked up the arse to roll it out. So here we are. I started with me. It's always a good place to start, right? Essentially, all of this stuff that we see going on out there in the world, if you work by the principles that I do, which are the alchemical principles based on, you could say, the Star of David. It's like triangle going up, triangle going down. Basically, it's an alchemical symbol. It means as above, so below, as within, so without. Now, if you're working with energy and you're not actually addressing this primary principle of alchemy, you are missing a trick. The things on the outside of you are not random stuffs that just happen to be there. They are showing you what's going on inside of you that you are not acknowledging. Basically, the outside world is a reflection of the inner. Okay, and when I'm talking about the inner, I'm talking about stuff that's deep in your subconscious and unconscious. And, you know, if you delve into kind of the understanding that we've had many lifetimes on this and other planets, you start to realise that quite a lot of the unconscious stuff can be quite, as well as the fact you're carrying all your ancestral stuff as well, wibble wobble, basically. So if you're understanding these things, I'm going to invite some people. Is anybody online? I'm going to like tag some people. Mystery mask. Surprise your viewers with a mystery mask every 5 seconds. I am live. I'm going to tag all the motherfucking people in the group. Because the whole idea was to do this live. But there is a strong possibility that no one's around. I'm just going to tag everybody. All the people that just got up, all the people that are avoiding Facebook, all the people who aren't avoiding Facebook, all of the people everywhere with everything, etc. Right, it's probably going to not like me if I tag many more people, so I'll leave it at that many. I just went through the list with no real kind of plan or rhyme or reason to it. Okay, so basically all of this stuff that we're seeing going on in the world at the moment is as a result of not only the collective shadow, but you got to understand you're not separate from the collective. Your personal shadow, including all your ancestral and stuff, feeds into the collective, which then creates this global reflection. So if you want to shift things within the collective, you have to start by doing the work on yourself. Like I recommend that people do the inner work, full stop, in whatever way you feel called to do it. Because the more that you do that, the more that shift that you go through, and I'm not talking just about the core level, I'm talking about the deeper layers too. The more that you shift your stuff, when I'm talking about stuff, I'm talking about all the stuff that isn't the truth of who you really are. Okay, so the truth of who you really are is that you are an infinite, expansive, eternal being of light that happens to be in a body, that happens to have had lots of lifetimes and lots of experiences, and all of these lifetimes and experiences are all actually happening at the same time. It's really interesting actually, because Michelle Yeoh, who's one of my favourite actresses, is bringing out a film in the next month or so called Everything Everywhere All the Time, which is based on this idea that time is an illusion and everything's happening at once, and actually what we think of as past lives are actually parallel, and so on and so forth, basically. But if you understand that you have this energetic connection to all these other aspects of you that are going through various different amounts of turmoil and so on and so forth, and when you make a shift, when you make a positive shift, you actually positively shift all of those other aspects of yourself. And so it ripples throughout time as well as space, okay, throughout dimensions and universes and all the rest of it. Now, if this is a bit too kind of like, whoa, out there for you, I do apologise. But, you know, I look at things from a quantum perspective all the time when I'm working. And I look at things from different dimensional perspectives too, because we aren't just this one note, one dimensional thing. We're just not. And a lot of what you experience in your dreams will show you that, whether you are willing to acknowledge this or not. Basically, I get a lot of information coming through in my dreams about things I'm processing, things I need to work on, things that basically are going to be good for me to address that I haven't addressed yet. Lots of understandings that come through due to work that I have already done. Basically, you know, sometimes when I'm shifting stuff, I don't know exactly what it is I'm shifting, but then I get in my dreams afterwards, I'm shown basically what's been shifting, and that was exactly what was happening with me last night. But essentially with this work that I want to do today, what we're doing is we are looking at, if you have any interest at all in personal development work, and I don't use this as a Bible as such, but it's quite a useful text to refer to. I'm referring to the Gene Keys book by Richard Rudd. And in particular, the one massive, well, there's quite a few keys are actually involved, I think, in what's going on globally at the moment. Like one of the really big ones that's going on right now is to do with key 6, which is the key that on the city of it is peace and the shadow is conflict, right? And that also is mixed up with, I mean, I can see looking at this, I've got like, there's a table in the back of the book that goes through the keys and their basics. Like the whole book's basically an in-depth like dive into each key and basically what the different parts are about. But you can see that this is also about dislocation. It's about intolerance. It's about impatience. It's about discord. It's about compromise. It's about judgment. It's about codependence. There's quite a few that are actually featured in this whole thing that you're seeing at the moment. And like, you know, I'm not looking at this as just being kind of Putin's a bad man and everyone else is a wonderful saviour, because I think we take a very simplistic view in the West of this as, you know, whenever there's any kind of a conflict going on, people always look at it from a very simplistic perspective because it's easier than actually trying to dive into the complexities of what might be going on, you know. And when you start to look at things like the fact that all the Western countries involved in this have been diving in going, oh yes, we'll loan you millions or billions to rebuild after the war and blah, 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 you start to think, hang on a moment. You know, everyone's so keen to loan money, you know, create more debt for people. When you look at the motivations going on behind that, you start to realise it's maybe not quite as simplistic as you would think from the surface of it. Obviously, Putin's being an aggressor, but there are other factors to consider in all of this. But I'm not really too interested in any of that so much as I am interested in the fact that if we are not resonating with peace at a cellular level, it cuts us off from the timelines where peace is the standard. Okay, so essentially it's really fucking important that we are coming from a place of peace, and it's really, really important that we do the work. So, and this is why I talk about DNA activation and so on and so forth. It's an important thing. It's important to get your DNA activated because in actual fact, fully activated DNA gives you access to higher timelines potentially, but you do also have to clear up all the shit that's going on with the DNA too. That's the fun part. That's the part that I kind of dive into, and I'm diving into with my quantum creation group, which is my group membership program, and actually going through how to do this stuff. But essentially, you know, we have been attached to what I'm going to call very low vibrational timelines on this planet, and the collective is sort of keeping everyone anchored in the lower vibrational timelines, and there's a shift that's trying to happen, and people are waking up to the fact that the shift needs to happen. You just see the way that people are responding to everything that's going on right now compared with, say, if something like this had happened a few years ago. I think there's a massive, massive shift in terms of people's conscious awareness of the fact that war is just not the answer and so on and so forth. Once upon a time, it would have been very gung-ho, like, yeah, let's send our boys in there, blah, 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 blah. And now I'm seeing, when I look around, much more, you know, consciousness that, you know, when you look at this, people are understanding that the Russians don't want this war, the Ukrainians don't want this war. This is a political game that's being played out, and no one actually wants it apart from the politicians and the people who stand to make money out of it. So we have had an upshift in consciousness as to what the fuck goes on with all of this stuff, which is good. But we've also got to understand we get the leaders that we deserve. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying like, yeah, we deserve really shitty leaders, but, you know, you've got to understand that the way that leaders behave, they are kind of ciphers for the collective shadow. They're showing us the stuff that we don't want to look at within ourselves, that's kind of uncomfortable and kind of a bit like, oh, what the fuck? And the opportunity with all of this stuff, as always, is that essentially you can see what's going on with the shadow stuff, and you can choose to shift it. Isn't that a marvelous thing? And what I'm going to do, actually, I've decided with this, is I'm going to embed the energy work in here, because that way, so I'm doing this now when I'm talking about it, and anyone who's watching the replay will get the embedded energy work, which I will embed after I've finished recording it. Seeing as no one's turned up for the actual live stream, which is probably just as well, because I've got, like, as you can hear, buzzsaws and fucking, you know, what else going on next door. Seeing as no one's actually turned up for the live stream, but I'm carrying on anyway, I will embed the work, because that way, those of you who watch it won't have to deal with listening to the sound of me burping all the way through, because when I work with people one-to-one, if I don't ever work like this with people one-to-one anymore, because I prefer to do other ways of doing things. I just do things differently, but I was called to do this masterclass today, so I'm doing it, and I'm going to embed the energy work, which means that you won't have to deal with me burping all the way through, which is much nicer for you, I'm sure, basically. So let's talk about, for those of you who are watching the replay, you will be receiving energy work. It will have started at the start of this. It's embedded. It's very specific. Hello to whoever it is that just turned up, basically. If you watch the replay, you'll receive the energy work that goes with this. I'm going to embed it. I'm saving everyone for my bullfrog burps because they can be quite loud, and I've already been a bit kind of burpy today anyway because I've done some work on myself this morning that's had me kind of like basically my body's shifting energy out, which turns into burping, which is kind of funny, but like it gets quite loud sometimes. I know that Al, my partner, always gets a bit like, what the fuck is going on? Sometimes he like looks at me and goes, "Are you okay, darling?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm just integrating." And he'll be like, "Are you sure? Do you need to go to the doctor?" I'm like, "God, are you not used to this by now? This is how it works with me." Some people yawn, some people cry or tear up, some people sigh a little bit or get a bit flushed. I burp, and sometimes I fart too. It's great. Painting a great picture, aren't I? But yeah, essentially, so you'll be receiving the energy work. What I am doing with the energy work, let me just explain. We are going in and we are sorting out hidden, what I'm going to call hidden shadow. Sometimes it's hidden. And I would also recommend that I'm at the moment putting together a podcast on complex PTSD, which will be out next week. Hey, Vivica. I'm putting out a podcast next week on complex PTSD. I started recording it the other day. I've got to do a mix for it, and I'll be doing video and stuff, and that's going to be on YouTube. I'll also put it on here. It's also going to be on SoundCloud and so on and so forth. I actually recommend that you mix this with that too, because in actual fact, I've identified the fact that an awful lot of people on this planet have complex PTSD that's actually hidden. Because we're so kind of, we go around thinking that the way that we live is normal and all the shit that we've been through is normal and that our highly dysfunctional families are normal and all the rest of it. And a lot of people who are a lot more sensitive than they even realise basically are kind of almost walking around in a state of semi-trauma without even fucking realising it a lot of the time. And that contributes to all of this. When you're traumatised at a subatomic level, what do you think happens? You look out into the world and everywhere around you, it looks like the world's gone fucking mad, because that's a reflection of it, in fact, what's going on with you, your particles, at the most fucking like finite level. And that will be also, you know, one of the big reasons why you don't feel motivated. You feel depressed, you feel stuck, you feel anxious, you feel like you're like running on a hamster wheel and can't seem to get off, or you know, you're just like stuck and stucker than stuck, and no matter what you do, it doesn't seem to shift. And when that's going on, it's because of this complex PTSD that's actually, you've normalized it to yourself to the point where basically you can't work out why you're stuck. You figure that there's nothing really wrong with you apart from you're really pissed off that nothing's moving. In actual fact, what's going on is you've got this complex PTSD, and it's almost like you're kind of poleaxed at an energetic level and can't move forwards because of the PTSD, which is making everything threatening to you. So what's happening is like your reality can't shift because of the fact that everything, your body at the most like finite level is taking everything as being potentially dangerous. Nothing feels safe, okay? And that obviously affects your nervous system, it affects your DNA, it then affects your timelines, your relationships, your money situation, the whole fucking 9 yards. And it rolls out into what you see in the world right now, where we have this like, you know, what was a standoff between Russia and Ukraine for ages, and also with Finland too. One of my friends is Finnish, and she was saying to me a few years ago that Putin had been amassing all sorts of things on the borders with Finland, and it was concerning because her parents have a place that's up near the border, and she was saying, you know, it looks like he's preparing for something. So I think he's had this in the works for a while. But essentially, you know, this is what you see on the outside, is this kind of like basically this need to defend territory, etc. Attack, defend. Do you see how it mirrors? I see it really fucking clearly. At one point I couldn't. I think it's one of these things, the more conscious you become, the more self-aware, and the more that you do the work with yourself, the more that you realise how much the outside world is showing you the internal stuff that you had been like glossing over for fucking ages. And the thing about this as well is there's an awful lot of what I would call the kind of false light fluffy bunny society, bless them, who are just like, well, just don't focus on it and it goes away. It's just like, no, because you are a cellular being with energy and particles and da 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 da. There are imprints that get stuck in you. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on, and you can't just gloss over it, because in actual fact, when you're constantly glossing over it, this stuff is going to like try and come up to the surface more and more and more until it gets to the point where you can't fucking ignore it. So you'll have people that will do really well for a while and then fall off a fucking cliff, basically. And I kind of feel like that's what's happened with the world recently, like where we've been coasting along, not looking at the shit, all the rest of it, and it gets to a point where you absolutely have to, and you have to kind of look at things and go, hang on a moment, what's actually going on underneath the surface? What does this mean about, you know, my life situation? Like, and you start to correlate things. Do you see what I'm saying? You start to realise, like, you start to see these direct reflections, as it were. And at the same time, when you know, I realised, I had lots of realisations about all sorts of things around all of this stuff to do with Russia and Ukraine. You realise that whole area of the world, the Russian steppes, all of that used to be Mesopotamia. They've actually got lots of ancient sites around there, and the equivalent, their own equivalent of the Nazca lines, basically. It was the centre of what I refer to as the Anunnaki Empire, who were very warlike, basically. If you want to delve into this stuff, you look at Mesopotamia, Sumeria, Babylon, all of that kind of thing. That kind of area where you've got like Russian steppes, kind of. Obviously, it's that the steppes extend out to Mongolia, but like Russian steppes, Ukraine, and then descending down into Turkey, Anatolia, all of that area, basically, and the history behind that. So look at things like Anu, Enki, Enlil, Inanna, all of those myths, and you start to realise that that land has a bit of a history of conflict. And there's an awful, you know, and obviously people carry the memories of that in their DNA. And like where these things aren't resolved, they keep cycling round until we actually fucking manage to come out of the cycle. Do you see what I'm saying? These cycles don't resolve themselves. We actually have to go in and actively change them. So basically the work that's going into this that will be embedded, you know, for those of you who are watching live, I'm embedding it because it basically, when I started talking, there was no one here. And I'm obviously saving you from my burping. So the work will be embedded. So watch this again afterwards, preferably at a point, like watch this before you can go to sleep, because you're probably going to feel tired. I know this is work that I did on myself yesterday, and I was fucking dead to the world. Like, I had a brief period of being really like, oh, I've got energy, and then I just hit a fucking cliff, as it were, or a wall, and passed out for like 7 hours straight, like no waking up, no nothing, in really intense vivid dreams, and then woke up having had these really intense vivid dreams, having a big understanding of a lot of stuff that I'd let go of. And you can probably expect, you know, you might not process the same as me, but the big chance is that you're going to wake up after you've received the work and it's done its thing. You'll be processing, you'll zonk out, because your body will need that time to integrate and to process and to energetically purge. Actually, you might find yourself quite sweaty when you're asleep, and And you will have any understandings that you need will come through in dreams, unless you're one of these people that basically, I don't know, smokes a lot of weed and doesn't dream as a result. Because that is something. Sometimes people who smoke a lot of weed don't dream. But yeah, sometimes there are some things when you release them that actually, from the point of view of your consciousness actually being able to shift properly, you need the understanding. And when you need the understanding, it will land, basically, even if it has to present itself to you in a really cryptic dream. So yeah, it's a fun ride doing this stuff, but I'm just hoping, obviously, because I got kicked up the butt by my own consciousness to do this, I'm hoping that it reaches the people it needs to, who are going to benefit from it, who are ready for the work. I'm going to say that, I think the key thing is, like, you have to be ready for it. Sometimes if you do this kind of level of work before you're ready for it, it can freak you out a bit, and then you end up kind of like scared of doing more, if that makes any sense. You have to be in a place of actually being curious enough to not be scared of facing your own dark bits and loving them, because we've all had lifetimes where we've been all sorts of things. And when the past life stuff comes up, it can be kind of difficult to look at sometimes, depending on like what's being highlighted. It could be that you end up being shown lifetimes where you were some kind of aggressor and you caused harm to others, or you were an eternal victim and you keep going around in victim cycles, or you're always rescuing people, and that's actually feeding the drama triangles in some way. Because that's one of the big things about all of this. If you look at this planet, we have been stuck in like really, really big cycles of drama for hundreds of thousands of years, in actual fact, with the way that we operate. And in order to evolve out of it, we need to bring awareness to where we're bringing the fucking drama in the first place, basically. It's creating peace starts with having awareness of where you're not peaceful. Am I right? And understanding that when you start becoming aware of where you're not peaceful internally about things, but without judging yourself for not being peaceful, like the first lesson of Fight Club. The first thing about doing this work is to literally, you have to switch off judgment of yourself and of others too. It's really fucking important. We are all doing the best we can. I mean, the first thing I turned around to Alan said when all this stuff started kicking off was, I literally said to him, I was just like, my God, Putin is a man who was never hugged enough as a child by his mother. Like, and this is obvious, he is, yes, he's stuck in his ego. Yes, all of these things, but like, where does that come from? This is someone who was brought up in communist Russia and was probably desensitized to all sorts of things, was probably had quite a harsh childhood. And not everyone who has a harsh childhood ends up being a psychopath, but some people do. And in actual fact, there's something I was reading the other day about the fact that psychopaths are born, not made, and sociopaths are the ones that are created basically by nurture. I mean, like, something probably you could debate for hours, but when you see, like, when you look at Boris Johnson and his behaviours, you look at actually anyone in the government, like, I just see, when I look at these people, what I see are scared, defensive, angry toddlers who are absolutely desperate to protect themselves at any cost and damn the consequences to anyone else, because they don't know any better. And it's almost like they never evolved past that toddler stage because they got frozen from the treatment that they received probably as toddlers. And there's a psychologist whose name escapes me who talks about boarding school syndrome. And Al rolls his eyes at me a bit when I talk about this because he was sent off to prep school when he was 7. He didn't come out being a raging psycho. But, you know, I can see some of his pathologies. Not that he would like it when I say things like this, but like I can see the way it's affected him. And you can really see it with people who've gone into political office, as it were. A lot of the people who are, you know, put forward as leaders, they have very cold, they were born into very cold families a lot of the time, and they then had what are called traumatizing educational experiences at boarding schools where they're sent off really young, and like their defense mechanism to being bullied, being sent away from home really young, ripped away from their mums way before they were ready, sent off to boarding school, probably bullied relentlessly, all the rest of it is become very brittle. You either like it's dog eat dog, kill or be killed kind of mentality that comes in of like you're either going to be bullied or you become a bully because of the environment. So they become bullies, and then that just carries through into later life because that trauma from way back when they were kids has never been resolved. And so it perpetuates. And so they visit it out on everyone else because they're really fucking angry with the world. They're angry with their parents. They're angry with the world. They're angry with the fact that, you know, they didn't get the love, attention and kindness and compassion that they wanted or deserved as kids. And so they're seeking revenge on absolutely everyone around them. And this is why the world is the way that it is right now. It's a mess because our education system's fucked. The way that people gain political power and like go into, certainly in the UK, is fucked. You know, all of our politicians went to bloody Eton or whatever and all went to prep school and all were bullied probably and all probably abused, you know, and became narcissistic because that was their defense mechanism as a result. And now they're narcissists with lots of power, but they were sent to these places so that it would prepare them to run the country or have big, important corporate jobs. And you can sort of see why the corporations are fucked, why the political landscape is fucked. You know, why all of this stuff is fucked when you start to look at this stuff. And you go, isn't this insane? This is what needs to change. This is actually what needs to change. On a physical action level, this is what needs to change. We need to, you know, we need to say no to these education systems. We need to say no to feeding them, no to putting our kids in them, no to anyone who's put their kid through them, that child having any level of power whatsoever. It doesn't matter how much Latin they learned or, you know, how many gold stars they got for, I don't know, being on the cricket team or whatever. What's actually needed is for people who have been brought up in loving, close families and taught compassion and kindness and sensitivity. You know, men and women who are actually openly acknowledging the fact that they're sensitive and caring, basically, as well as being educated and having an understanding of, you know, things like agriculture, like useful subjects, like how agriculture actually works. You know, I'm not talking about industrial farming. Hey, Audra. Yeah. Yeah, we need people like that running the planet. At the moment, we don't have that, but, you know, I have high hopes that as we individually commit to doing the work and as we join together in groups and do the work, and as we focus on the world that we want from a cellular perspective, you know, and I'm not talking about just like what you think with your conscious mind. When you're talking cellular, you're talking about the 95% of you that you have no fucking awareness of what's going on. So you know, going back to this gene key 6 thing, the conflict one, you know, if you've got a ton of conflict in your cells, that's then going to be what you see on the outside, loads of chaos, etc., etc., etc. The ability to actually work with your chaos and pull what's actually required out of the chaos to get things done is something that everyone should master. You need to be able to sit in chaos and actually understand it and pull out the threads that you want. I just sort of think of this as like weaving. In order to weave the world we want, we need to be able to sit in the chaos, you know, in amongst all the balls of wool and go, which are the threads that are actually, that we weave together now to create something new, basically. So, Audrey, I was just saying to everyone before, because I was merrily by myself when I started. I'm going to embed the energy work in this. So everyone has to watch it again if they're attending live. Because I was just like, you know what? I burp like a bullfrog when I'm doing work anyway. So if I just embed it, it saves everyone from dealing with my burps, possibly farts, etc. I'm a fucking charmer, aren't I? So yeah, essentially we are going to be, the work that I'm embedding, what it does is it's going to be getting rid of, how to describe it? It's going to be getting rid of the shit that's lodged in your cells that is continuously causing this outside chaos, conflict, discord, all of that shit. All of the basically. It was quite interesting. I was having a conversation with Sabrina on WhatsApp the other day, and I was digging into where within me, aspects of me had issues with things that were directly connected to the whole thing to do with Putin and the Ukraine. It's not comfortable to do this work. You end up having to look at some stuff that you'd really rather not admit to, but the bottom line of all of this stuff is that, you know, if we're going to become more conscious, everyone bangs on about consciousness, but becoming conscious means becoming self-aware. So it means acknowledging the fact that you are the creator of everything that you experience, or the co-creator, and where the fuck are you co-creating it, and why, and what's going on, you know, like where are you holding anger that you're not acknowledging, that's creating these shit storms outside of you, because that's its way of showing itself. Yeah, it can be a bit like, oh my God. When you start to acknowledge this stuff, it can be quite uncomfortable. You can't just plaster over it with some affirmations and be like, everything's fine, as it's like nuclear bombs going off around your ears, or all of that shit. You know, if I just think hard enough. No, doesn't work that way. Your body's like a giant fucking cellular battery memory thing that holds all these memories and all of this emotional memory. And if you're not dealing with the emotional memory in some effective way, and I'm not talking about talk therapy, because talk therapy is no fucking useless. It's useful from the point of view of like getting you. Talk therapy is really, really useful from the point of view of helping you to like verbally process what you're understanding about like the aha moments you're having and all the rest of it. But if you're doing talk therapy and you are not combining it with any kind of actual effective energy work, you might as well be pissing into the wind, in my opinion. This might be slightly controversial to anyone out there who thinks that just counselling will sort everything out. In my experience, now, you know, most of the therapists or coaches that I've met who are worth their salt combine energy work in some fashion with the work that they're doing, because they understand that it's way more effective than just talking about shit, basically. And it doesn't, you know, I don't work with the EFT. At the same time, sometimes I do use the EFT. Sometimes I need like the somatic approach to things. Sometimes my body wants that. It's not something that I come online and do videos about, because there's 1,000,001 videos about this stuff that you can access on YouTube and stuff. Like, I do the energy work that I'm called to do, the stuff that comes through me. I work with stuff. I work with the particles, etc. And you know, I do things in the way that's natural to me. That's, you know, it's organic to me to work in the way that I do. Other people do things in different ways. Other people are trained in all sorts of different modalities, you know, like it doesn't matter so much about the modality. The key thing is being comprehensive with the way that you're tackling stuff. And I've spent, you know, the past 5-6 years developing the work that I do so that it is comprehensive. Yeah, when I first started, I used to just do stuff and it was natural to me, but I didn't understand how it worked. And then I think, you know, because I wanted to understand how it worked, I started giving myself experiences where I had to dive in and work out how it worked, right? Because we are always creating everything all the time. And I've now come to the point where, you know, I could, with my group, when I'm taking them through things, I can drill down into stuff and go, right, okay, so this is what you do with this, and that's what you do with that, and da-da-da-da-da, and hold my hand up. If there's something I don't understand, I'll be like, yeah, I don't know how to, like, that's the bit I haven't quite figured out yet, or whatever. But the simple fact of the matter is that essentially the ability, I'm going to say the ability to be unflinching when you're looking at your shit is really important, however that looks to you. So, you know, none of this fluffing over the top. Let's just gloss over and pretend like, you know, let's take this house that's falling apart and just put a new layer of wallpaper on it and pretend it's all fine. Like, how many shows have you seen where like people buy a house and they're like, oh, we thought it was our dream home, and then we moved in, and then the next thing you know, the roof's leaking and the fucking wiring's gone and all of these other things, and we didn't get a survey and da-da-da-da-da. Same thing. You've got to fucking go right down to the foundations and see what's going on, basically. Is there a subsidence issue in this person? Basically. And the modalities I've developed are really, really thorough because they've been based on my work of diving in and actually working out all the different bits and so on and so forth. So, you know, the work that I do is super thorough like that. I always think it's a mistake to discount any part of your energetic system when you're doing work because, you know, what was it? I think Archangel Michael once said to me something along the lines of like a system's only ever as fast as its slowest component. And I pretty much take that attitude of like, if there's a bit you're missing out, you can almost guarantee that's a bit where that's a bit you really need to be looking at, because that's where something's going to be hidden that you basically have no awareness of. And if you don't deal with that bit, then that'll be the bit that trips you up down the line, if that makes any sense. Like if you took your car to a mechanic for an MOT, you would expect them to go over the whole thing, right? Not just like, I don't know, not just check the mileage and the fucking stick a dipstick in the oil and go, oh, she's good to go. Innit? So yes, this is my philosophy on this stuff. But essentially with the whole creating of peace on the inside, it is a genetic thing, and it does, like, it goes way beyond you right here, right now. This is about, you know, from a genetic perspective, a genetic and DNA perspective, we are the children of generations of people who have been traumatized by war. And those imprints are still in our DNA. And guess what perpetuates? Yeah, that, basically. So from a cellular point of view, what needs to happen and what's going on in this, or certainly as much as I can in this, like, however long it's going to be. I don't even know what the fucking time is because I've left my watch downstairs in the bathroom. It needs to be, basically, from a cellular point of view, it needs to be sorted out. Not just, you know, your experiences of war. Of course, anyone who's been through war in this lifetime is going to have really fucking, like, close to the, you know, close to the eyeball traumatic experiences to do with war. You know, there are people on my friends list who've been through war experiences in this lifetime, you know, and they're feeling super triggered at the moment, understandably, because of the fact, you know, they lived through one and they thought that was it, done, and now they see it all starting up again, and they, you know, people go into a freeze response. But you think about it, you know, our parents, like, okay, so my mum was born towards the end of the Second World War. My dad was born after. He was lucky from that point of view, so he missed it. My grandparents, so my grandpa was in the RAF on my mum's side, sorry, on my dad's side. My mum's parents, I don't think that, yeah, they were quite middle class, and they lived in the country. Well, they lived in Leamington Spa, and I think because he signed off as my grandfather, he wasn't really my grandfather. He basically was a doctor, so he basically stayed looking after the patients at home. So from that point of view, but you know, they dealt with like bombing raids and all of that stuff. So there's that trauma, the trauma of like, are we going to have bombs dropped on us each night when we go to bed? That, you know, the whole thing of like, there's a siren, we need to get to the shelter, all of that shit. You think about it, they probably lived through the First World War too. In fact, yeah, I know that on my mum's side of the family that definitely happened. I remember my grandma talking about her parents basically talking about World War One. I think my grandma was born after World War One. Don't quote me on that. She was like 65 when she died. She wasn't massively old, actually. She just seen a lot. But you think about it, you look at all the wars we've had, various different wars. I remember doing work with a client who's actually in my group program now, ages ago, who had like issues going on in her shoulder, in her body. And I was doing a lot of emotion code work at the time, and I was basically working with the emotion codes and the Akashic records. And I had this whole thing come through about how she had basically been shot in the shoulder in the Peninsular Wars, basically after going to war because of some kind of unrequited love thing, because she was a man in that lifetime. And basically, so they shot in the shoulder and killed. And I did the work to actually sort out the energetic side of things, and her shoulder completely freed itself up. Basically, that was a past life war injury that was like traumatized. That, you know, she didn't have memories of it in this lifetime. You see, like, I don't know how to describe this, like the work I used to do everything focused on the Akashic records. You know, stuff comes up now if it needs to when I'm working with people, but it doesn't necessarily, if that makes any sense. I always kind of prefer to leave people to delve into that shit for themselves rather than sort of turning people into past life tourists, if that makes any sense to you. But the simple fact of the matter is we've had centuries of war on this planet, these war cycles, and they are now, in fact, they probably always were. Like, if you look at it, like, war was always about grabbing land, profiteering, taking slaves, various different things. Nowadays, it's about selling arms. You know, look at the amount of money that Lockheed Martin make, for example, Westland, other arms companies that I couldn't name to you, but those are the two that spring to mind because I know what they're called. You know, look at the fact a lot of these city banker boys invest in these quite heavily. There's a vested interest from that point of view in keeping us going to war, because there's a lot of people that make a lot of fucking money out of it, and there's all the people that make money out of rebuilding afterwards. So we'll do a contract for you, we'll come into your country and help rebuild the infrastructure that basically our people just bombed the shit out of and knocked down. It's very lucrative. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, it's carried down through. And the other thing as well is, like, obviously, so your parents, it's not just the eggs. Your parents, and I'm going to go into this more actually in Quantum Creation Group. That's something I'm going to do when I show up in there. I might have a bit of a break because my throat's getting a bit scratchy after this. But so essentially, if you look at it from an energetic level, when you're a baby, You're in your mother's womb and your whole nervous system is forming. And your energy and her energy are totally intermingled. There's like this exchange going on all the time. So you have your soul energy comes in, but in actual fact, your body is being made out of her material, right? Obviously, you're going to be picking up her stuff, just like she picked up her mother's stuff, and so on, down the line. Also, if you look at like the morphogenetic field of the DNA, it carries a lot of information from the family at large. And you can shift stuff in your family by shifting your DNA and so on and so forth. We know this, you know, and you know this already. But essentially, kind of, if we looked at people, if we got rid of the form, yeah, exactly, it goes down through, doesn't it? It's kind of crazy if you think about it. So yeah, it's most of us are carrying imprints of war. So we're going to be shifting the energy work I'm embedding is going to be properly shifting that stuff out. There's going to be a lot of stuff attached to it. I think for those of you who haven't really done much of this before, who watch this and are receiving the energy work, please do make sure that you give yourself time to nap / pass out for hours on end if you need to afterwards, because you are going to need to, because your body is going to be shifting so much stuff, basically, as a result. Audra knows how many naps she has to have after she works with any of my shit. She can tell you. So yeah, you're going to want to nap. You're going to want water. You may find after all of that you have a massive protein craving when you wake up and you're hungry, or you might want carbs. You know, like your body will tell you. I often, if there's a lot going on, there's a lot shifting and my genes are shifting and all the rest of it, I tend to get massive protein cravings. I'll be like, I need steak. Or, you know, I'll go downstairs and eat just cheese. You know, I don't want anything else, just cheese. Sometimes, though, during the clearing process, it's like, spinach, and I just become obsessed with spinach, like 3 meals of spinach. So understanding that, you know, as I always say to everyone I work with, you know, like, listen to your body. After any kind of energy work, avocados, oh yeah, vitamin E. I'm always like, B vitamins, anything with B vitamins, protein, vitamin E. Yeah, lots of vitamin E. I've been avocado obsessed recently. What else? Loads of water. Just water, more water. It helps flush everything through. And you will find yourself pooing a lot too. Fats, yeah. It's funny actually. Sometimes I get like I need smoked salmon or some kind of oily fish, and I know that that's when my myelin sheaths on my nerves are basically wanting some bolstering, like the big nervous system work. I can always feel when like my neural networks are doing lots of stuff, because it almost feels like pins and needles all over my body, basically. So yes, that's the advice, is make sure lots of water, listen to what your body wants to eat and honor it. You know, there will be specific nutrients that your body's like, gimme, you know, whether it's vitamin E or B vitamins or vitamin D or, you know, whatever. B6, B12, foods that contain those things. You know, you don't have to think about it. Just ask your body what it wants. And yes, I will also add in, there's an invitation in here for anyone who is wanting to actually take doing the work further and wanting to know about the Quantum Creation Group. You can message me and we can discuss. There's basically 3 different options for joining. There's a pay monthly 12-month subscription. There's a pay in one go 12-month subscription, or there's a pay in one go 6-month subscription. So there's different options there for everyone. depending on kind of what's going to suit you best. And we are diving into that's where we dive into the how. This is, yeah, we dive into the how, and also obviously people who are in quantum creation get access to all of my digital work included in that. Speaking of digital work, actually, I am about to, I had a big one land with me today, and I have been putting together a video for it today and a mix and all the rest of it, which I'm embedding stuff into. And I'm going to be, I need to write a booklet to go with it. So I'm going to do that. But that will be out in the next, however long it takes me to do all of the other bits to go with it. It's, yeah, it's a doozy. It's called Shadow Shifter. So yes, I'm excited to share that all with you guys when it's released. I have no idea what I'm going to price it at or anything yet. I'm just creating it at the moment. Price point unknown. Length of booklet that goes with it unknown. All the rest of it. But okay. I'm sending you all lots of love. I'm going to bugger off now because I'm now going to appear. I'm going to have a little break, and then I'm going to go and do the session that didn't happen yesterday with my quantum creation group. Mwah! Lots of love.